just to give it an example, the spectrum is like, for example, those who are listening to radios. When you're listening to, let's say, 99.2, that spectrum, that is a spectrum basically, is allocated to YFM. If YFM is not using it, they can take it and give it to someone else. So it's important to understand that this is very, very important. And I'm giving this basically as a background before I come to my actual topic. So we've got something else called 5G, which is basically an upgrade of 4G. It will be, I think, 100 times faster than 4G. And you need that to be able to operate in the fourth industrial revolution. But you need the spectrum for you to operate 5G. And I think this I'm sure all of us know, because my topic is talking about the black business taking advantage and taking a lead in 4G. This is just basically to touch on some of the current states. As you may know, South Africa is behind from technological advancement point of view. We are not where we're supposed to be. We have some insufficient skills for 4IR. We've got the minimal infrastructure. You'll know, for example, those who are coming from the rural areas, when you try to upload or download something in the rural areas, we have to probably go and climb a mountain or something there. And then this is the state of the market. We have got serious bottlenecks regarding the broadband rollout. We've got a challenge with the spectrum. The spectrum there have been a lot of delays. I think the minister was talking about that. They were supposed to have released the document last week, but that has not been done. They are only releasing it today. The cost of doing business is very, very high because of the cost of infrastructure. But also we've got mainly two companies that are dominating. I think the two big telcos are owning probably 90% of the market. And there's very, very limited black business participation, as you may know. And these are some of the opportunities for black business. We need to do a skills development of the future. The Department of Education is running with this thing already. We talking about the legislative framework. We need legislation that will drive black economic empowerment and black ownership of the means of production. Access to funding is very, very important, as you know, and the access to market. So I think my speech basically starts from here. The dynamics in the country are like this. For us to, if you want to implement any 5G networks in the country, you need the spectrum. And if you want to operate a network, you also need the spectrum. And you'll agree with me, there are no black people who own the spectrum. You can look at all the ownership of all the spectrum that was allocated before. It's not owned by black people. It's owned by black empowered companies, yes, but it's not owned by black companies. So what this means, it means we're only participating as customers, as end users. We are the ones who are probably, from a demand point of view, are the ones who are demanding the most broadband in the country. But we don't own anything. So as the minister has indicated, they're about to issue a document, and there are going to be two opportunities, as far as we know. There are going to be two opportunities. One is through an auction, and the spectrum is likely to be costing maybe $4 billion one tranche of the spectrum, which means black people won't be afforded an opportunity, they can't afford it. The second one is what is called going to be allocated to what is called the wireless open access network. And we have been lobbying for the division of the spectrum like this in a way that 45% can go to through the auction, and then 55% be allocated through to that one. And that's where we want the black business to play a role. We want black business to own the one and participate with other SOCs, other big and small businesses, but we wanted that part to be owned by black business. And then our argument is that the introduction of the WAN will facilitate new entrants, enables black business participation, and also enhance competition, because as you know, there are only mainly two providers, and they basically own the market. If any other person who tries to enter the market, they get taken out of the market. So it's important that there should be almost a set aside of the spectrum to at least facilitate entry of black business. And also what we are looking for, what we are saying, there should be an offtake, a guaranteed offtake by the current producers, because by the current service providers, so that the WAN is sustainable. Because if you just come in and say 55% of the spectrum is given to the WAN, but you don't give the WAN any contracts from the big two, which is MTN and Vodacom, you may not be able to sustain the operations of the WAN. So we also argued with government that we need to also give the WAN access to the infrastructure, because as you may understand, once you get given the spectrum, you need to develop your own infrastructure. So if you're given a spectrum today, it takes long to develop infrastructure. You'll know much better than I. So in the meantime, while you don't have your own infrastructure, our argument was that let the WAN be allowed to utilize, obviously on a commercial basis, the infrastructure of the current incumbents, because that at least will give the WAN some time to develop its own infrastructure. So if those proposals are implemented, we don't know how the policy looks like. We'll know when it's released. We'll be able to try and address the market concentration. And from an ownership point of view, once the right people own, the service providers as well will be black. So if the ownership of the WAN is black, you need the people who are going to develop the infrastructure and then deploy it. Those people obviously will have to be appointed by the owners. And if the owners are not black, you know what happens. They are not going to in any way appoint the black suppliers. Also from a downstream point of view, once you've got the WAN, your ownership of the spectrum, you've got the network, you have to then take the services to the homes or to the industries. Those downstream services can be done by black people as well. The biggest thing I think for those of us who are coming from rural areas is that the current players have actually neglected the rural areas. Besides the fact that in the policy document of ICASA, they were supposed to provide the services to the rural areas, but they have not done it. They rather choose to pay penalties instead of actually doing the work there. Because from a commercial return on investment point of view does not necessarily make sense for them. So we believe that once we're working with the SOCs, black business will have an interest of making sure that the rural areas are connected by the ownership of the one. So the if we win this type of battle, I'm sure we'll be able to lead the 4IRS black business. But if the status quo remains, I'm afraid we're not going to be able to make any difference. So my call basically is, this is it's an opportunity for us to rise up and do something. Instead of complaining and sitting in the corners, this is an opportunity for us to, once the policy document comes, let's make sure that we interact with the document. Let's comment through the proper channels. So even if there are battles and fights in social media, anywhere else, radio, TV, let's make sure that we are there. Because you can imagine if you are sitting there as a employee of government, you are not going to run government by snippets and this and this. You run it by one perception, but you also run it through proper submissions, properly written and properly and well thought documents. So my call for all of us is that if we miss this opportunity, we'll be like those who missed the discovery of gold. We are never going to catch up as black business. So this is a big development for the country. I'm sure if the minister is pushing transformation, those who are against transformation are going to want to fight the minister. So we should be able to defend the minister if he's fighting for transformation and for especially for black business. But if we miss this opportunity, I'm sure 25 years down the line we'll be sitting here talking about the same thing, of lack of access. We'll be sitting again as consumers. I'm sure by that time our buying power will be almost 95%. So we'll be just consuming what is being produced by other people. So my plea is that let's take this on. Let's make sure that the spectrum is given to the one. Let's make sure that we also, when the time comes, because once the one is given the opportunity, there will be a need for us to participate in the one as business owners. So let's come in and participate. But firstly, you have to fight the policy. If you let the policy decide to say, instead of 55% given to the one, the spectrum is maybe only 10% is given to the one, then you know that you've lost the battle. So let's use all the other mechanisms that we can use to lobby, and make sure that we make proposal, we submit documents, and let our voice be heard.